Welcome to the Realtor for Hoopers podcast.
When I pull up with my dogs, we gon' ball like Swish. No, I ball like. No, I ball like.
Well, welcome to another episode of the Realtor for Hoopers podcast and interview series, episode 15, actually.
That's pretty good.
So today we got Jason Nygren, right?
Yep.
Just a guy that's really highly invested in this Denver basketball community for a really, really long time. Has been a coach at all levels.
All except college, technically college. So
Technically college?
I
Well,
coached
great.
everything else.
Well, good. Well, I really appreciate the time.
Of course.
I guess we always start off with a basic question of tell us your basketball story.
Yeah, my basketball story includes Denver. I am from Hastings, Nebraska.
Okay.
Small town, all about sports. The town is sports heavy. You had to try hard not to find a pickup game when I was a kid. And so we had lots of basketball. I had a guy that, there's always a person, right?
Yeah.
A guy, Bill Gavers, is his name. He played at Hastings College, was an assistant coach with Hastings College in Nebraska. And he ran a morning pickup game for us. And in the fall, we called it fall ball. And in the spring, we called it rise and shine. And it was 6 a.m. And it was every day before school, every day.
Oh.
And we would have 15.
That's
Easy.
awesome.
It was great. It was at the local Y or it was at the local high school. But he was the guy that, in my circle of people that in Hastings, and he could still play. And he played at Hastings College. He was a really good player. And I thought, if I can compete with Coach Gavers, or his nickname was Cheetah.
It's a great nickname.
He was a tennis guy. You would get to see this guy. He's the quirkiest dude you've ever seen. He had like a mustache for the longest time. He'd always blow through it. Like he was just super intense.
Okay.
And he would get us up every morning. And if we didn't have enough players, which was rare, he'd always wear a hooded sweatshirt.
Okay.
And we would have to go one-on-one full court, and he would wear a hooded sweatshirt. When he was out, when he was not in the game for whatever reason, missed his shot, he was over there doing crunches on the sideline. He was nuts. So he was the guy that got me dialed in high school. But even before that, my high school coach gave me the keys to the high school team when I was a junior. I didn't play as a sophomore, wasn't even on varsity.
Whoa.
And then I started as a junior, and that starting, Coach Verton is his name, and he's passed now, but I have a tattoo of him on my arm. And he was the one that gave me the keys to basketball. And I started as a junior and played every single game from those last 2 years. In fact, my senior year, I didn't come out for a single second. Actually, I take that back. I was out for 30 seconds once at the end of the season. I played every minute, I was sort of just his, I think he just he said, here, drive this. And we were, not great. We had another all-state player on our team, but those two guys, Steve Verton, Coach Verton, rest in peace, and then Bill Gavers, who was Hastings College and Grand Island Central Catholic head coach and back to Hastings College. But those guys really started my basketball journey. Fast forward, Bill Gavers was recruiting for Hastings College. It was the only college opportunity I had to play basketball. So that's why I went to Hastings College for 2 years.
Yep.
And from then on, it was sort of, it changed from there. But I played 2 years at Hastings College, and then I decided I wanted to try to walk on at Nebraska. Don't ask me why. I was just
had the ambition.
Yeah, I went to a Husker basketball game, and there's this guy named Clifford Scales who was number 23 with Nebraska. This was 1993 probably, and were playing against KU. And I remember Calvin Rayford.
Yep.
If you remember Calvin Rayford, he's about 5'6",
Yep.
which the only guy in history of basketball that I'm taller than. And I was watching this game, and I'm like, I'm gonna transfer, and I'm gonna try to walk on. I'm like, let's go. And I had another walk-on opportunity that summer. This is where the Denver part comes in, but I decided to transfer to Nebraska, and I was a practice player for a little bit.
Okay.
I was actually, I called the coaches. I knew one of the assistant coaches, and I said, I'm coming to school. And he said, son, come here for school, not for basketball, because I'm 5-0, 100-0.
Yeah.
And he essentially said, come here for school. We have a full roster, that kind of stuff. And I'm like, okay. Went to the rec center one day and somehow got onto the pickup game with the team. They were there. And I made every shot, it felt like. I made every stop, it felt like. And one of the players came up to me, Jerron Boone. I'll never forget this. Jerron Boone was a starter. His dad played in the NBA and was a broadcaster. Jerron said, "You need to be a walk-on." And I said, "Well, I've already talked to coaches," and they said, "There's no spot, whatever." The next morning, I got a phone call from that assistant coach, and he said, "Your name's on the list to come to the open gyms at Devaney, our arena at Nebraska." And from then on, I was a practice player. So never played, never got on the court, but
you're part of the team.
I was part of the team for a little while. I ended up getting cut toward the end. They had two other walk-ons, so just had a really good, kind of preseason part of the regular season, and then they kind of just shut it down. It was like I was like the sixth walk-on, if you will. So anyway, my friends on our intramural team in Nebraska are like, "You're the 13th Husker." I'm like, maybe, maybe. But no, and then, from that point on, basketball from a playing standpoint was sort of done, other than just rec ball and that kind of stuff, intramurals. And then I got my first opportunity because of the Denver Pro-Am to coach in the NBA. So
wow.
And I can continue with
so
that too.
So that
it's a big jump. Sorry.
No, you're good. No, I did a little. I listened to an interview you did on YouTube a few years ago, and one of the first things you taught, you kind of just said it quickly, that you got your first NBA job at 23 years old.
Correct.
Which is nuts. And so I just want to hear that story of how that happened, because there had to be some luck in there, and I appreciate that. So basically, I've had two dream jobs, two of my two NBA full-time stints, a decade apart. And my first one, so when I was in college, my parents had moved from Nebraska to Greeley, Colorado, right? And so I spent all my summers in Greeley, and I ended up playing in the Denver Pro-Am, which was the Shaka Foundation, Denver Pro-Am at DU. We played at a couple other rec centers around town. This is when, for reference, for your listeners, Chauncey was a junior in high school. So we're talking 93, 94. So I'm playing on this Denver Pro-Am team, and I joined this team. I'll rewind that a little bit. My UNC guys, so these University of Northern Colorado guys, I ended up playing on their team, and one of our teammates happened to be Milt Newton. And Milt Newton played at KU, won a national title in '88 with Danny Manning and that team. Crew. And then he was working for the Denver Nuggets at the time. Well, I'm on this Pro-Am team, and I'm not playing. Yeah. I'm the third guard. Yeah. And I'm the smallest guard. Yeah. And everybody looks faster than me, and they all look like better basketball players than I do. And so game one, whoever started, and the coach quickly pulled him out for a turnover or something dumb. Second guard goes in, and he does the same thing, sort of just screws it up. And he literally, I'll never forget this. He was standing there. He kind of looked down the bench, didn't say a word. He just kind of did that, sort of motioned me in. Yeah. I was like, okay, here we go. And I went in, and again, didn't miss, felt like. Threw an alley-oop to one of our guys who could put his head on the rim. Yeah. And was just did a bunch of good things. And I never came off the floor again. Those other two guards never came back. Okay. So they Pro-Am, right? Yeah. And it was, sort of like this 3-on-3 league. But, less entertainment, but just a standard basketball league. And so anyway, my teammate was Milt Newton, working for the Nuggets at the time as the video coordinator. Okay. And I went to Milt and I said, "How do I get in the NBA?" Yeah. I had no idea. Yeah, I'm 21, 22, whatever. And we ended up, he kind of in the moment said, "Yeah, I'll help you, just keep in touch," with that kind of thing. Well, he leaves the Nuggets, goes to work for USA Basketball, and I'd sort of lost touch with him. And I go to an Omaha Racers basketball game a year following. Okay. Omaha Racers are a former CBA team. Yeah. Yep. Semi-pro.
Yep. And the previous, the predecessor to the G League. And Milt Newton is there in the gym. And he was there because he worked for USA Basketball, and he had the USA Basketball team that he was promoting, and a couple of the CBA players were on that team, and a couple of Duke guys. I forget the guy, but anyway, so I walk up to Milt, and I was like, "Oh my God, Milt, how are you? Let's talk. Let's, I still want to get in the NBA. How do I do it?" He's like, "Call this guy, and maybe you can work camps for him next summer or do whatever." Well, that guy was Mike Brown.
Whoa.
The Mike Brown, right? Yeah. Who had taken over for the video coordinator position for the Nuggets. So I called Mike Brown, and I worked basketball camps the following year. And I should have brought the photo. I had this camp photo of myself, and then JB Bickerstaff is in it.
Yep.
Mike Brown is in it.
Okay.
A guy named Chris Grant, who was the general manager for the Cavaliers for a little while.
Okay.
He was now a scout with the Spurs, but he was the GM of the Cavs, I think, when they drafted LeBron, if not somewhere in that time frame.
Yeah.
But he was involved with the Cavs for the longest time when they hired Mike Brown as the head coach.
Yep.
And anyway, I worked camps, and then the story gets worse and then better. Camps end and the season starts up again, and I go back to college to finish my last year of school. And I get a call in February, or maybe it was like January. Anyway, it doesn't matter. And he's like, hey, the Miami Heat need an intern. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Let me call the Heat and see what's going on. Well, the guy I called, Eric Spoelstra. And I was like, I'm from Nebraska, small town kid, never been on an airplane.
Wow.
Yeah. And so the thought of going to Miami for an undisclosed internship that I didn't realize the weight of it at the time, it was just a lot.
It was
I was
scary.
Like, very scary. And I said no.
So they offered you the internship.
The internship.
And you said no.
And I said no. To work for Eric Spoelstra. I know that.
You have no idea now.
I understand the weight of it now. And everybody listening is going to be like, you moron. And then, yes, that's true. So then I get another call a couple months later. He said the Minnesota Timberwolves need an intern. I'm like, I'm in. Okay. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care anything.
I'm not passing up another opportunity.
And at least Minnesota was a state or two away from where I was. So it didn't seem too far away. And I ended up being an intern for the rest of the season. In February of '96 is when I started, and then I got hired full-time that summer. And that's when we drafted, KG was already on the team. Stefan was a rookie.
Okay.
And then we were getting ready to draft. I'm trying to remember who my first draft pick was. It might have been Paul Grant, which people may not remember Paul Grant. But I was on the Timberwolves coaching staff.
So what was your role?
I was video coordinator.
You're very good.
I was assistant video coordinator on the video staff. And back then, totally different than it is now. If you look at an NBA roster now or an NBA coaching staff, you have 3 front of the bench coaches, 3 to 6 behind the bench coaches, and then the staff you don't see are another 5 guys that just work players out. Yeah. Well, I was one of 5 on the entire coaching staff for the Timberwolves. Yeah. Small staffs.
Yeah.
And so I did all game film breakdown. I did draft film breakdown. I was the last guy around, so I would rebound for, like, my guy was Billy Curley.
Yeah.
Everybody remembers left-handed Billy Curley from Boston College. He was rehabbing an injury. And so I was just the guy that I was always around, so I was the guy that would shoot every day with these guys and work these guys out. This was before player development was even a thing. You just you go and shoot, go work out.
Well, it's also before any kind of digitized film and all that. Yep. All this is still VHS tape.
It was tape to tape.
Yep.
We would digitize VHS film on this Avid editing machine.
Okay.
Where I would have to I can still remember the sound of the buttons, and you run the video, and I would basically watch the film, and when I saw a play call that I needed to pick up or any set play that a team would run, I would rewind it, stop it, isolate that clip, and then I could write the play call over the top of the clip.
Got it.
And so it got so prepping for the playoffs, for example, we had to watch all 4 of the games we played against that team. I just remember Utah, for example. I remember the Jazz. We're getting ready to play the Jazz. This was John Stockton, Karl Malone, that Jazz. And I remember watching the Jazz so much that when they came across half court, just based on, without even running it or making a call, I'm like, that's whatever it was. I'm like, because I've seen it so much.
You're making the calls.
I already
call John Stockton is.
And it was literally like basketball school for the first, at least year of doing that, because you're just watching film. And this is not an exaggeration for your listeners. This is not a hyperbole. It was 12 hours-ish of just watching film.
Yep.
Every day.
Yep.
No day off from the start of the season through the end of the season. Not Christmas, not All-Star break. Maybe a day at All-Star break, through all the way to the finals, because we wanted to film everything, and we made the playoffs. So getting ready for the playoffs, you have to watch. We had to watch 3 teams at once, so we had to fully prepare for 3 different teams, which is about 8 games, about 10 to 12 hours of just watching film per team, and then whatever team that we ended up playing on the last day of the season, you throw away the other 2 and you just go to the one. And so you did triple the work. All-nighters. Probably 2 all-nighters. Nothing crazy. But we did that. That's just the standard of what you do to get ready for the playoffs. So these guys that are getting ready for the playoffs now, each round, I know the teams are, it's 1 of 2 teams, or now it's only one other team you're getting ready for. But it's just
Yeah,
Back then it was harder.
The Celtics guy is deep diving
He's in
in
it.
Mavericks and
He better be.
Timberwolves.
Yeah.
Like,
They've got a guy live there and in the gym watching. They've got a guy back that's doing the video clips. They've got a guy that same video guy is doing the individual edits of all these things. And then you could literally, back then we didn't have the ability to do all that, isolate stuff. But you could literally do anything you wanted to at that point with breaking down right-hand drives, left-hand drives, mid pick and rolls, angle pick, like all the things, transit, whatever you wanted to, we would do. So I was 23 when I got that job. And then fast forward, I literally got, not fired, I guess, but let go because of a coaching staff change. And they let me go. The bad thing is it was 2 weeks prior to the start of the season. And my head coach was Flip Saunders at the time. Okay. Kevin McHale was my boss. Yeah. And Ryan Saunders, if he listens to the podcast, shout out. He now an assistant coach with the Nuggets. I used to work Ryan out. Ryan and I would rebound for Ryan, and we'd shoot together because he would come to practice. Yeah. He was like a teen. He was probably a 13 or 14-year-old kid at that time. Anyway, just it was basketball immersion, just all of it, just like you're in it nonstop, and it was all year round.
You have to be you have to be fully willing to geek out on every aspect of the game. That's what I call, if you think, people think geek is a negative connotation to that word, but like, I think when you get to that level, like, you have to be a geek for your craft.
Yeah, it's like, whatever you're willing to put up with. Yeah. And people always ask me since then, and I've had a couple of their NBA positions, some part-time, another full-time one, but they always ask, like, hey, how'd you get in? How'd you do it? What do I need to do? Like, do you have any advice? Whatever you are willing to put up with, do that. Yep. If you're not willing, I've seen some guys, I'm thinking of somebody in my head right now that I can picture him, and I wish if I talked to him, I would say, you need to do more. I can see you not doing enough, and that's why maybe it's not happening for you. But it's whatever you're willing to put up with, whatever you're willing to do. And I always thought, as a player, I was the smallest guy. I had to do more. As a walk-on at Nebraska, I had to do more. As a high school player who was what I am, I had to do more. And so I was always like, no, I enjoy this. I enjoy the work, and I love the work, actually. Absolutely. I still shoot as much as I possibly can. I love shooting, and it's just whatever you're willing to put up with. And you have to know somebody. And all those things.
There's some lock-in, there's some connections and things
like that. No question. And even still, I got let go twice. Right? Like I was with the Nuggets in 2011 to 13, and we got fired. After winning the most games in Nugget history. Still to this day, this team this year tied our record, but we still had 57 wins, 25 losses. That is still the record to this day. So, and we still got fired.
It gets to be where it's still a business.
It is, 100%.
Well, good. So the next question is, since you've been a coach for, almost 20 years now.
Almost 30. Almost 96, 30. So we're 2 years away from 30 years.
That's amazing.
So
that's really
tells
cool.
My age,
Yeah, good. So. Well, I guess I wanted to kind of get into and have a discussion with you about kind of the difference between college level and pro level. And kind of take it from two angles. One, what do you think's the biggest kind of catalyst to guys who, don't necessarily thrive in college, but thrive in the pros, and also vice versa? The guys that are really good in college and then they get to the pros and they can't stay in the pros, or they're all of a sudden not the same guy.
The thing that pops into my head first from the college to pro, why some guys succeed in the pros and not in college as much, is space. So in the NBA, of course, there's the defensive 3 seconds, which matters. So the spacing is totally different. The shot clock is faster, right? So everything in the NBA is geared towards getting a good shot as fast as possible. And so what ends up happening is you have a player who can stand in the corner for spacing purposes, but through rotations, through defensive rotations, like a double, and then we rotate out of that, somebody's left open. And the ability to, like I jokingly say, the secret to basketball, everybody wants the secret to basketball, create a closeout. If you can create one closeout.
Create rotation, create movement.
And you can treat the closeout well. Or properly, you can get any shot you want, or get a good shot. Not any shot you want, but you can get a good shot. So if I have a player in the corner and we end up rotating, and that player can treat the closeout properly, meaning that's where the quick decision comes in.
shoot it, pass it, or dribble it within a half a second.
Yep, and even attack the high foot, attack the low foot, all that.
Yeah,
Again,
and if they can attack the closeout and get to the paint, well, we're going to get another closeout. And if I can get 2 of those, that's a dunk.
Yep.
If I get 1 of those, it's an open 3.
Yep.
Right? And so the space in the NBA allows for a player who may be limited with, and I hate the term, but I'll use it, the bag.
Yes.
Not every player, hopefully young players listening now, I hope you understand you do not need a bag
Nope.
necessarily to play at a high level. You need, quick decisions and the ability to do what it is that gets us a good shot.
Yep.
And that might mean catch go, right? So I worked with a guy named John Welch, and John Welch is now the assistant coach at Fresno State, or associate head coach. I'm not sure exactly of his title, but John Welch was long known as the guy that was the best player development guy in the NBA for 20 years.
Okay.
He worked with Tim Gergerich, so anybody out there, Google Tim Gergerich, and you'll be blown away by what he's done. But John played at UNLV, was our assistant coach with the Nuggets, and he ran all of our player development. Anyway, John never worked on the Drew Hanlon. I love Drew Hanlon. I love these guys that do this stuff, but he never did that stuff.
Yeah.
Never did. He worked on catch go, change direction, catch decide, right?
Yeah.
Respace after you play and throw, right? And so being able to do those simple things for a guy, I'm trying to think of a guy that fits into that mold. I don't know if you want to talk about Bronny, but I will talk about Bronny, why I think he's going to be okay, why I think he's going to make a team.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying he's going to start or none of that. I think he can make a team.
Yep.
Because I think he can do those things that are required by a guy that's not going to play very many minutes. So I look at my friends and I, guys, we talk about Christian Brown a lot.
Yeah.
And why does he get to play? Because first he's 6'7", first of all, whatever he is. He's big, he's strong, he's fast, all those things. But he does the simple things that he has to do. When he's open in the corner, he shoots it.
Yep.
When he's not open, he'll drive it.
Yep.
Not with some cool bag, which I'm sure he has, but not some breakdown Jason Tatum kind of thing. He just goes to the paint and he makes a decision.
Yep.
Might be to pass it, might be to shoot it. So he has carved out a place to where, as a 7th or 8th guy on that team, it's perfect.
Yep.
I don't need you to score 20.
Yep.
There's a guy.
There's a part of that you got to know your role.
100%.
Yes.
And I always talk about too, in the off season, that's when you expand your role.
Yeah.
So Christian Brown this summer, if he's listening, I hope I don't know, get in the gym and shoot threes.
Oh my gosh.
Because you're not very good at shooting threes right now. No offense, and he'll probably, if he was sitting
He's
there,
not as consistent as he needs to be. No.
It needs to be a better percentage. It needs to be better in the corners, and then maybe get a one dribble change direction thing figured out. Something you're comfortable doing. And I think if he can figure that out, his role will expand.
Yeah.
And he'll gradually be a better player. But there's some guys that are, you look at a Tatum, for example. He is geared for the bag and the shot, an isolated shot. So back to the original question of why guys do better in the NBA. I think it's truly space. And again, it's the offenses and the defenses are geared toward getting a shot as soon as possible within the clock. They don't run a screen and roll to hit the roller. They run a screen and roll to get a matchup.
Yeah.
Maybe, or they run a screen and roll to essentially, and I'll use a football analogy, to get the safety to pick a receiver.
Yep.
Like the backside guy, like Luka, when Luka goes downhill and you see what he's doing and he's pausing, he's literally reading the weak side defender.
He's not reading. He's not worried about his defender.
His guy's behind him, first of all, because he does that in jail move.
Yeah.
His guy is irrelevant.
Yep.
And then the guy who is guarding the screener, he's looking at him to see if he comes and gets me, I throw it to the roller. If that guy drops or does whatever, he's looking weak side, and you'll see it, and he'll make these passes, and you're like, how did he see that? Anyway.
It's the same with Jokic, so it's called court mapping. So the moment you just take a picture, and then you're able to see, okay, I'm going to manipulate this guy's eyes this way, and then go there.
Two of the smartest guys, in my opinion, of court IQ.
Yep.
And people are going to say, what about LeBron? Well, I think those two guys right now, with the basketball in their hand, are the best at manipulating the weak side, the help, the rotation, whatever you want to call it. And I think they're the best at finding that guy and getting the shots you want. Like there's the guy that got me in the NBA the second time, Chad Iskey, he always talks about getting the shots we want.
Yep.
It's not about making the shots.
Yep.
It's about getting the shots we want. If we can get the shots we want, we're going to have a good chance of winning.
Absolutely.
And Luka gets that downhill thing, and he will look weak side and get the shots that Dallas wants. There's a guy in the corner that's specifically there on purpose, right?
Yep.
It's not an accident that's
PJ Washington.
PJ Washington, for example.
Yeah.
He's there on purpose.
Yep.
Kyrie is over on that side as well on purpose.
Yep.
And so that's why guys in the NBA can, if they can fill a certain role, like Bronny is smaller than I thought.
Yep.
So that I was, at first when I heard he was only 6'1" and change, I was like, it's a little small, but they compared him to Gary Harris.
Yeah.
Gary Harris is the same ish, within an inch, and probably more athletic than Gary Harris.
Yep.
He's got a 40-inch vert.
Yeah.
He's going to be fine. So
Yeah.
I think the one thing people forget about is Bronny has been playing professional basketball his entire life. And meaning he's been playing against his dad's friends all his life.
Yep.
And this summer, he will play against even more of guys like his father in the gym every day. He's going to be fine. I think he makes a roster, if not G League, up and back. I actually think even G League guys aren't as good when they come up because the game down there is a lot faster.
Yeah.
It's faster than the NBA, which is hard
Absolutely.
to say, but it's faster.
I said this to somebody else. Bronny's been learning the pro intangibles since he was a 2-year-old.
What question?
You know what I'm saying? Like all the other things about how to be a pro, he knows more than the vast majority of guys trying to make the league right now.
Yeah.
He's just got to learn to find his role and find the right team and whatever.
Yeah.
But I want to go back. So now let's go to the other side of the coin.
Mm-hmm.
Guys that are just stellar in college, and then 3 years later you hear they're out of the league.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I think that the first thing that pops in my mind is the decision making.
Okay.
They're probably a poor decision maker. They probably were an isolated or a featured person in college.
Yeah.
I think about Kentucky's had a really good run of good guards lately. I used to, like John Wall, I thought was maybe the downfall of sort of, and I like John Wall, don't get me wrong, but there was like this stigma of Kentucky guys that they're just like, they just need the ball all the time and they're not good off the ball. Well, now I think guys that absolutely have to have the ball and can't play without it, we've all seen the guy on a team that cannot play without the basketball.
Yeah.
And when they don't have it, they stand, they just take up space. And they're,
I mean, honestly, James Harden is a perfect example where
yeah,
he's getting better.
He's not going to screen.
Yep.
He's not going to cut. But he's also top 4 elite with the ball. So
absolutely.
You got to have.
But what I'm saying is that it's just that guy who, if you're not able to play at all spaces and all spots on the floor, like sometimes you're just going to struggle.
And I think, and I've said this early on, like Porter Jr., for example, and not to pick on him, but when he doesn't have the basketball and he's not involved in the play, there is a distinctive look on his body language and his face where I'm not in this play. It's not my route. This is not my play to run. So I'm just, he's been better this year than he was before, but the cutting and that we talk about, like, can a guy play or not? To me, that means can he play without the basketball? Can he cut at the right time? Can he screen at the right time? Can he make the right pass, the right play? Does he know what good shot selection is?
Yeah.
And I think a guy that washes out, and I can't think of anybody in my mind right now that has truly washed out, has been a sort of a bust, if for lack of a better term, but it's the guy that doesn't make the good decisions, doesn't understand how to play with professionals, and doesn't understand how NBA defenses work. In college, you don't have to rotate. There's no rotations in college. They don't double and rotate. They just plug the lane, and the shots are difficult. They're all contested. There's no space. That's why I talked about the space thing. If you can't figure out how to do that and make the decisions simpler in the NBA, you're going to have a hard time. You're going to be replaceable. And maybe they're not as good, but they're replaceable.
Yes.
And a guy that can do those things that we ask from an NBA standpoint are, not irreplaceable, but they're really good at it and they're tough to replace.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and I think where you get into guys where you like people say that I can't believe he's still in the league, whatever, it's because they've figured out all of that. Like, I'm just irreplaceable, even from just like a locker room standpoint.
Al Horford.
Yes, exactly. Like, where it's like, so now Al realized that, like, hey, I'm only going to get a post touch if a switch happened that shouldn't have happened. But the vast majority, I'm just going to be playing my role, be a great leader, be a great intangible, whatever. And if you don't accept that, where, hey, I'm no longer going to be even the top 4 option, like it's hard for some guys, and some guys are willing to humble themselves a little bit, and some guys aren't. And I think that's just part of a pro being a pro.
I think the evolution of how do you stay in the league, whether you love to be there. Al Horford must love to be in the gym every day. I remember he was Florida when they won. So that was a long time ago. Like that was
15.
It got to be.
Yeah.
So a long time ago. So he's a guy that became a proficient at making threes. He's defensively. He makes the best decisions, or makes mostly the right decisions. Probably, he doesn't miss an assignment. He doesn't miss a screen and roll coverage. He doesn't forget to rotate. He's not in the wrong place. And in the locker room, he is an adult.
Yep.
Right, and he's not going out. He's probably at home. Just things like that. You're like, that's really valuable.
Yep.
If Boston wins this year, Al Horford will be a giant part of how they play.
Yep.
And the how versus how well they play. The how they play is based on guys like that in the locker room.
Yep.
So that's
for sure.
Yeah.
Well, good.
Love it.
Well, let's get into. I want to ask a question kind of more on the youth basketball side now.
Yeah.
So, kind of, what do you think about? I would say that maybe it's over the last 10 years. I'll just call it like the rise in club basketball, and because I would say 15 years ago, it was still high school was the most important.
Yep.
And now it's becoming last.
Yeah, it is last.
So now, kind of just what's your thought on that and how it's affecting youth basketball and things like that?
Yeah, and my son, who just graduated last week from East High School, went through club basketball. So we're really close to it. I coached a bunch of his teams, but a lot of it he played for somebody else. But he played locally for Pro Skills basketball. I'll give a shout out to that, and Ross Schrader. But played at Pro Skills, and Pro Skills was more of a, we don't need 10 blue chip guys.
Yeah.
We want a good team.
Yeah.
When we do the tryouts, we would pick a team that fit, or a team that,
Chemistry is more important than talent.
Yeah, and kids that wanted to do it the right way and didn't need to be featured. If I'm coaching a club team now, I'm going to have a meeting with the parents and say, if you need your kid to be featured at the age of 10 because you're working on a scholarship, that happened. That's not. It's a joke, but it's.
My son's 11,
and they're like, oh, we want a scholarship. Stop.
Yes.
If you need to be featured now, play for somebody else.
Yep.
This is not going to be your place.
Yep.
And I think the club has taken over as the importance because of how recruiting works. Coaches don't really come to high school basketball games because they can't, because they're in their own season.
Yeah.
I get that, there's these recruiting periods. I don't even know the dates, but come July in these big national tournaments, even these like circuit tournaments. There's another whole thing. It's all the circuit basketball with the Adidas and the Under Armour and the Nike. But there's such a concentration of those players and teams because that's where the recruiting happens. And some local kids are like, well, I need to be on a circuit team just to be seen. No, you don't.
Yeah.
You don't. Practice more, play more pickup, play more casual basketball, and less, 6 games in a weekend and 1 practice. Like the Gino Auriemma, when he talked about that's the problem.
Yeah.
That is exactly the problem with American basketball, with U.S. basketball, that they don't practice enough. And when they do practice, it's once, but it's all games on the weekends, and it's a grinder. The reps are less. It's just, there's so many things involved other than just how to be a better basketball player. I think that's the biggest disconnect, is we don't practice enough, nor do we play enough just pickup ball. Every guy that, it's 40 or, anyway, I guess 30 to 50, we played pickup basketball nonstop. And now we don't do that anymore. It's hard to get guys to play pickup. If you find it, do it. If as a high school kid, if all the guys that you and I both know, all our friends, that they're all in their early 30s, late 20s. They all played pickup basketball together.
Yeah.
And I think that was the best way to, show up on a Saturday morning at 9 a.m. and play till noon. Awesome, right?
Yeah.
And then in your spare days or whatever, you're shooting nonstop or you're in the gym somehow. But I think the club basketball, getting away from practice, is a detriment, is a giant detriment. The total number of games, the parent input, the thought that if my kid doesn't get recruited at the first day of the open recruiting period, that he's not going to stop. That stuff just really bothers me. But I understand that a parent thinks that that's how it goes, and maybe trying to find or talk to a college coach to say, how does this recruiting process
Yeah.
work? Please tell me, because we think it's grinding it out from the age of 8 to 16 every spring and summer. That's the way to do it. It's not. I don't think it is. But I don't know the exact way to do it. But maybe it's something like club, but a little bit like the European model.
Exactly. Right? I think there's two things I want to say. One, I think I always have the phrases that the truth is in the middle somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where it shouldn't all be about high school ball, and it shouldn't all be about club ball, what it is now.
Yeah.
There should be a balance in there where during the summer, there are these camps and club teams and things like that. But like, I think what made high school basketball so important back in the day is that your coach you have 2-hour practices 5 days a week.
Yeah.
And you're grinding over, and you're getting so many more reads of how to, once you come off a screen, how to play that, what the defense is, how the defense is playing. You're getting so much more shots and whatever. Like a lot of times, like, you gotta think about like these club teams, like let's say a guy's a really good shooter, but he has 5 other really good shooters on his team. Like, okay, maybe he's getting 7, 8, maybe 12 shots a game.
How do you get a touch?
You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, so you just played 8 games and you got 90 shots up during in-game action.
Yeah.
And great, it's again great competition, and you're learning. It's a faster game maybe and all that kind of stuff. But wouldn't you rather go into a gym and shoot 500 shots and learn going back to the bag? Wouldn't you want to how to learn a new dribble move?
Yeah.
And you can do that one dribble move 150 times.
Yeah.
And a balance of, okay, now I've been what I call the lab. Now you've been in the lab learning how to develop your skills, and then you can bring them to like game action versus you don't have time to learn a new skill because all you're doing is game action.
Yeah, it's the thing I think about is if I'm going to work out with a player that I'm training or whatever, the first question I ask is, give me your scouting report.
Yeah.
What can't you do, right?
Yeah.
And what can you do? But what can't you do? We need to work on that,
Yeah.
right? I always tell every kid, there's a scouting report out there on you. And
Absolutely.
there is.
Yeah.
There truly is. There's one on me too.
Yep.
It's probably, no one uses it anymore,
Yep.
but there's one on everybody. Your job is to rewrite it.
Yep.
That's your job
Yep.
as a player, is to reroute the scouting report. So if you can go left and pull up efficiently, but you can't go right, we'll figure that one out,
Yeah.
right? That's how we do it. If you can shoot off the dribble, but you can't off the pass, why? When you're player developing, to your point, we can get in the gym and we can do reps with live reps. We can get 2 players or 3 players and work on live reps that can get you more touches than you would in your weekend AAU. I understand you have to play the AAU stuff, that you have to play basketball all year round to an extent. I think I always go back to, if you're good enough, the coach will find you, like the college coach, which I do believe is true to an extent. But there's so many kids that think they want to play in college or think they want to keep going, but they're not really sure. I think they're delusional of what it takes to do that. And I think the more that a kid can be honest with himself, self-evaluate, write a scouting report on himself, and then work on those things, and back to the original thing of what are you willing to put up with?
Yeah.
What are you willing to give up? How much are you willing to carry? I think that's where a kid like that can play in college. And, it's like, I worked for Coach Carl with the Nuggets for 2 seasons, and he's very adamant about AAU has ruined basketball in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And I don't disagree to an extent, because the kid, if it doesn't fit for the kid, if he doesn't like it, just leaves.
Yeah.
And we see that now in college too. The NIL is totally different. But, kids jump. When I hear about the kid that jumps multiple club teams each year,
Yep.
I'm worried about that kid.
Yeah.
As a coach, I'm like, what's wrong with him?
And now it's the same kind of thing with the transfer portal in college. It's the same
question.
idea.
And I understand if you go to a program and the coach leaves, go leave. You went there to play for that coach. It's sort of like in the business world, people don't quit jobs, they quit managers.
Absolutely.
Right? And so if you don't like your head coach, maybe you leave, and that's fine. You have your right to do that. But I think if you see that as there are kids we've all seen in the club scene here locally that every year they're on a different club team.
Yeah.
Why? What are you hunting for?
Yeah.
What you want better than good?
Yeah.
Good luck to you, because it's there's something to be said about getting your butt kicked once or failing, right? There's something about failing that helps. It's I don't remember the wins really. I remember the games we lost for sure, some of them, but you remember the losses you had, like the beat-downs you've taken, and it's I think if you are trying to avoid that because it's like, oh, my son or my daughter is feeling, whatever, isolated because of that failure, that's a learning experience. That's the one you need to fight through. That's the one you need to stick with.
Yeah. So, it creates some grit and some work ethic. If you
sure.
don't have the role you want or on the team you want, or that you're not getting as many shots, to be able to have the staying power and prove to your coach that you don't think likes you or whatever, that you deserve more playing time, or so on and so forth. But
the truth cannot be controversial.
No.
That's what Flip Saunders once said
I love
a long
it.
time ago.
Okay.
So anyway.
We could go on and on. And
I know
on and on.
we could.
So, 2 more questions. One, it's more of a debate question, and I have a thought to this, but I wanted to ask you, who is on your Mount Rushmore of coaches? It can be coach at all levels, doesn't have to be pros, but who's on your Mount Rushmore of coaches?
Yeah, the first guy I think of is my high school coach, Steve Verton, and Coach Verton was in 2 Hall of Fames in Nebraska and in Missouri, I believe. Passed away a few years ago, but he was kind of the first serious coach I had, and I'll never forget our practice plans. They were down to the minute, like in the odd minute, like 8:02, 8:07, and that was not a joke. We stopped at 8:07. Now, it seems a little bit overdone now as a coach. I don't know if I could do that, but I had no doubt we were prepared. Our coach watched all the film. He'd show up on a Thursday afternoon for a Friday game or a Friday shoot-around or whatever. He knew every play that our high school team was getting ready to run, what we were going to do against it, how we were going to adjust what we did. It was incredible how well we were prepared. And I knew he loved me, like as just as a person.
Yeah.
He was an arm around you guy, but it was a big, tough arm sometimes. I loved him, so he's number one on my list. The other guy, the guy I mentioned earlier, was Bill Gavers, who essentially taught me how to compete. He was the one, like I said, he was probably 8 to 10 years older than we were at that time, and I thought if I can just compete with Coach Gavers, with Bill Gavers, with Cheetah, if I can get a shot off or I can stop him, I'd beat anybody.
Yeah.
George Karl's on my list, certainly because of the opportunity he gave me to work with the Nuggets for 2 seasons. We're still friends to this day. I still see him once a week at least, and we do a lot of just talking about basketball. We'll sit and watch basketball and talk about life, of course, too. But he's absolutely on my list. He was a guy, controversial for sure, has said his truths a lot, and people have come after him for those truths, players included. But knowing who he was in the locker room and how he treats the game, and how he loves the game, respects the game, and always talks about don't F with the game. I remember a specific moment in the locker room where he went after our team because he thought that they were being cute and a win. We were winning. And so he always respects the game. He'll never call Dean Smith Dean. It's always Coach Smith. So he played for Dean Smith. And then, the other guy, the guy that I'm working for now, who he's going to listen to this, he might be blown away by it, but is Todd Shays. So Coach Shays at Kent, giving me a shot to come get back in the gym. And just the way, I've told this to a number of the parents, to a number of the coaches, the people that I work with, Coach Shays has, I don't know if he does it intentionally, I'm sure there's some of it, but he just loves the people that he's around, right? I'll never forget day one of our preseason. It's like October, and the whole 20 kids are there, and maybe 5 to 8 of them are not going to make the team even. But he'll stand there, and he's been a coach now for 30 plus years at Kent, and teaches 6th graders. So he knows a lot of these kids coming up through through Kent. So he's known them all, and he knows them really well. But he stood there in front of the team, and he said, "I love every one of you. Basketball aside, I love every one of you. First of all," that's the first thing he said, and I'm like, "Oh my God, what?"
Yeah.
And so it was just kind of oh my gosh, this is going to be a great experience. The kids are encouraged and loved. But his ability, and this is from basketball and the culture standpoint, I think he's changed how he's played over the years a number of different times. And right now we're trying to play as fast as possible.
Yeah. We're
trying to score as many points as possible. We had multiple, 90-plus point games. For his ability to shift how he teaches and coaches to how, what he thinks is going to be fun for the kid. What he thinks the kid is going to enjoy. I think that's amazing. And from a high school coach to do that, I would absolutely put him on my Rushmore right now.
That's awesome.
It's fun.
Well,
it's thank
you for Thank you for approaching that question from a personal standpoint.
Yeah, thank you.
I think that was, there's lots of ways you could have taken that, so I appreciate that. I think having the coaches that really have had an impact on you, and then also you can see that they've had, like we talked about, staying power. Like all those coaches you talked about had staying power. It wasn't like they had a 4-year run where they coached really well.
Yeah.
They've been able to coach multiple generations as cultures have changed, as players have changed, and all of that. It really truly becomes the definition of a profession then.
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
Those guys aren't watching YouTube videos on how to coach. They just know how to do it.
Yeah.
So.
I think the common denominator of all those people too, as well, is two things. They love the game. They love basketball. And people always say all the time, "Oh, I love the game." Do you?
There's levels.
There are levels to this, right? and I'd fight anybody on my level, right? On how much I love it. But each one of these guys, just in their spare time, it's basketball.
Yeah.
And then when they wake up, they're thinking about basketball. And when they, talk to whomever, they're talking about basketball. And they have, to your point, evolved with kids and with people with all ages throughout time. Coach Carl, for example, changed, his coaching style throughout, right?
Absolutely.
But it all came from Coach Smith. But we were in Denver in 2011 to 13. We were the second fastest team in the league. We were first in paint points. We ran more fast break points.
Yeah.
We, first in steal. We had all these first and second type categories. The thing we couldn't do is shoot threes.
Yeah.
We tried, but we were really bad at shooting threes. We were near the bottom of the league. Anyway, for those guys to change how they do things, and Coach Shays even, my head coach sort of stayed with what he did, my high school coach, Coach Burton, but they all evolved somehow, and they all figured out a way how to relate to another younger kid. Every year, a kid gets younger, right? It's you get a year away from that high school kid every year. So for Coach Shays to be able to identify and to reflect and to just show up for these kids all the time is pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
So anyway, each one of them has their own thing.
Good.
So yeah.
Well, I have one more question for you,
Please.
but before that, I want to acknowledge you.
Thank you.
I want to acknowledge for how much, one, you continue to invest in the basketball world, whether that's here in the Denver community or whether that's, throughout the country. And I know you have relationships throughout the country and all that, but also just being a fellow basketball geek and being able to just ingratiate in every little aspect of the game. And I've never met one person that has a bad thing to say about you.
That's good to hear.
That's always a good telltale sign of a good man.
Nice.
And
Thank
so
you.
I appreciate that about you as well.
Yeah,
So
that's awesome. Thank you.
last question is, it can be a simple one, but it can be also a hard one. What's your favorite thing about basketball?
I two parts, if I can, player and coach.
Okay.
So I've coached more than I played.
Yep.
And I think as a player, I loved the work. It wasn't work. I was talking to my son the other day about the last day of school, and when I was a high school kid, because my son just graduated, and I was telling him how I wanted to be shooting when the sun came up. I don't know why. I'm like, I'm going to stay up all night, and when the sun comes up, I'm going to start making jump shots outside. I was outside, of course. And then I made a few shots at 6 a.m. or whatever it was, and by 6:30 I was asleep, right? So I loved doing the day-to-day or the work of basketball, the shooting and ball handling, that kind of stuff. I still shoot as much as I can. It's less now, but I try to get in the gym 3 to 4 times a week just to shoot. And I have some friends that kind of push me to do that as well. So I love that part as a player. As a coach, it's the competitiveness is still there. I want to win. People always talk about, it's about playing the right way. It is about playing the right way and how we play, but I want to win these games, right? I don't care what it is. I want to win these games. And there's nothing like having an idea or a thought that may be unique or maybe one that you've taken from I took from my high school coach or whomever coach we stole from along the way. We've all stole something. And implementing that, the kids buy in, they do it, and we win with it. It's amazing.
Yeah.
You're just the idea that I had worked.
Yeah.
It's not the only idea, but it is an idea that worked, and we won with it. And there's not a better feeling in the world to me as a coach to be a little bit creative, try it, and it works, and you're like, that worked. That was awesome. And because you don't know sometimes.
Yeah.
And to get that buy-in from a kid and from to have a parent from 30 years ago that I coached in a club team, see them randomly somewhere, and just to say a nice thing like, hey, when my son played for you, he, loved that, or he was encouraged, or he loved playing for you. Nothing like it. So, two different answers.
But I like it.
But
like both
those
of them.
are, I have to go both ways because
Yeah.
I've done both. So
it's two separate basketball lives to
yeah.
a certain extent.
Basketball is absolutely a heartbeat. It is a North Star. It is it's meditation. If things are bad, I go shoot. If things are good, I go shoot. If I want to get a workout, I go shoot. It's if I'm not doing anything at home, I'll grab a basketball. It's just the place that I go to for all of the things that are important to me. So,
well, good. I'll leave it at that.
I appreciate it.
Jason, appreciate
Thank
the
you.
time, sir. Have
This
a
is
good
awesome. Thank you.
When I pull up with my dogs, we gon' ball like Swish. No, I ball like. No, I ball like.